Hello, welcome back to Mr. Lamb Science Corner. Today we're going to have kind of an involved one that can be actually used from anywhere from elementary school up through high school, possibly even college. But don't be afraid, there's lots of different levels to this one, so you can do pretty much however you want with this one. This is talking about the contest between alternating current and direct current for electricity. And I'm going to start off with a little bit of history, if I may, and list four people that would be very important to the name. That's Thomas Edison, George Westinghouse, you probably also have heard of him, Nikola Tesla, different spellings abound, and one person that you may not have ever heard of is Harold Brown. Okay, so these four people were the most important in the fight. They actually call it the War of the Currents. It got that vicious. You have Thomas Edison, who everybody has heard of, hopefully, was a very strong proponent of direct current, possibly because he did a lot of research into direct current and he had a fair number of patents that would be worthless if they used alternating current. And you had Tesla, who was a strong proponent of alternating current, worked for Thomas Edison for a while, tried to get him interested in alternating current, couldn't, so he quit, started on his own, got a few patents on alternating current, and then George Westinghouse, who was an entrepreneur and had a lot of drive and a lot of money, bought up Tesla's patents and hired Tesla, and he went to work for him. And the war was on. Okay, so and then Harold Brown came about a little bit later because there had been a accident involving alternating current, and a man got electrocuted in New York City, and Brown had a problem with that, and so he started talking about how terrible alternating current was, and Edison snapped him up and put him on tour, and this does not rebound well to Thomas Edison, so you may not want to tell your students, or you may, whichever. But they went around electrocuting stray animals with alternating current to show how dangerous alternating current was. And in fact, I believe that they one time electrocuted an elephant that was due to be destroyed. And as you might well imagine, it was pretty ugly and long and drawn out, and they filmed it gleefully and showed it to everybody. So Brown, in fact, went on to co-invent the electric chair, so using alternating current, high voltage. They had a little fight. So you have the problem of AC versus DC, and we'll get to the HVDC here pretty soon. So I'll set this aside. Now, getting to very quickly, AC, the Pro, if I can have here, you can change the voltage, and that's the main advantage to AC, is that you can run it up high to transmit it from one place to another. The reason that's important is that the amount of loss of energy between hither and yon, say the generating station and you, is a function of the current and the resistance. The resistance is built into the wire. It's aluminum has a certain resistance, copper has a certain resistance, silver has a certain resistance, and then so it's mainly a function of the current. So if you're going to have all these people drawing power, you have to bump the current up fairly high, which then leads to a lot of line loss. Alternating current, you can put the voltage up really high, which means you can drop the current to a fairly small amount, and then you lose less energy. So alternating current basically can be quite a bit cheaper than direct current. Doesn't have to be. So less energy loss. The con for it is the high voltage is quite dangerous. If you were to see a 20,000 volt line laying on the ground because of high winds or something like that, leave it there. It really is quite dangerous. It can snap around, and just the fact that the wire can move so fast, like a whip, it could actually take off a leg or an arm, just that, let alone electrocute you. Don't send your kids out to play after windstorms. In DC, the pro is that if you have low voltage suitable for a home, it's safer than high voltage. That's the main thing. But the con, you cannot change the voltage easily, and back in, when we're talking 1880, couldn't at all. So you had to have really high current flow, which meant that you lost a lot of energy. The interesting number that I saw just today researching this is that they planned on having a power plant within 1 mile of the end user. That's you. So if you live in a town, as I do in Klamath Falls, you'd probably have to have 10 or 20 power plants just for Klamath Falls and the surrounding area. If you go up to Portland, quite a bit more. New York City, they were planning on 121 plants just for New York City, and I kind of doubt that it covered all of New York City. Because power was so expensive, they weren't planning. I don't think they were planning on covering the poorer parts of town. I could be wrong on that, but that would be my guess. So anyway, the DC is very limited in what you have. Now AC, interestingly enough, cannot be used for long distance transmission. We have a intertie between the Dalles, Oregon, and basically LA area, and they have to use DC because alternating current, if you go more than about 700 miles, it radiates it all the way like a radio antenna. But the reason they could do that is that they found a way to change to where they could go and create high voltage DC and then step it down to actually change it back to AC and then run it into the power grid. Okay, so lots of information there, probably more than you want to know, but I'm thinking that if you are doing science, you could also turn this into a reading assignment, have them read about the War of Currents and read about the biographies. Thomas Edison had a very interesting life. Harold Brown has things. I don't know a whole lot about George Westinghouse, but he must have had a fascinating life himself. Tesla, he is a very interesting and a very strange man. He had some very, very way out there thoughts that still haven't been explored fully as far as I know. You may know him from the Tesla car. I'm not sure who is it. Elon Musk. That my wife, the camera person, is nodding her head. Elon Musk named the car Tesla because he wanted to honor Tesla. He had a very interesting life. He had been born in Europe, came here, was up, was down, was up, was down, and eventually died penniless because he was not a businessman in any way, shape, or form. So you could turn this into a reading assignment. You could have them write papers on these things. You have the individual 4 people there, and you have more that you could get into. There's lots of things you can do with this. It's not just science. Okay, so let's get to the science itself. DC if I draw a graph of voltage versus time, DC could be either positive, and notice it doesn't change, okay, or it could be negative, and quite honestly, it doesn't really matter a whole lot. What matters is the voltage difference between your ground, 0, and either the positive, or in this case, the positive or the negative. And that's what helps drive and gives you energy, is a combination of the voltage and the amperage or the current. So DC is either positive or negative, and it doesn't change. Alternating current goes in a wave. The official name is called a sine wave, if you're interested. And it will go and hit a maximum, and then go through 0 and hit a minimum, and come back up here and hit a maximum, and just keep on going, you know, in that sine wave curve, going positive, 0, negative, 0, positive, 0, so on and so forth. And so that's why they call it alternating current, because it changes. Now, if you're in Europe, it does one wave 50 times a second. If you're here in the United States, it does it 60 times a second. I'm not really sure it makes a whole lot of difference in terms of things, but it means then that your electric shaver that you are so proud of here and so faithful doesn't work worth a darn in Europe unless you have a special adapter, and other things won't work either. So we use 60 cycle, they use 50 cycle, and you'll get arguments on both sides as to which one's better, and I'm not going to jump into that at all. But the thing here is that it goes through 0 twice through each wave. It goes positive, then 0, negative, then 0, and then repeats. So if we have 60 cycles per second, it goes through 0 120 times every second. Okay? Now, most of the time when you look at a light, it doesn't make a bit of difference, because you have the persistence of vision in the eye. You can't see a flicker that fast. You can try, but basically you can't. So the demonstration that we have here is that if we used a regular light, incandescent light, we're going to not be able to see any difference. It's going to look straight on. But if we have a neon light, and this happens to be from a night light, so if you happen to have a night light that you're not using anymore because your kids are grown up or something like this, if it's neon, this will work. If it's not neon, if it's too new, it'll probably be LEDs, and I don't think that'll work. I haven't been able to try it yet because, but I don't think it'll work because most LEDs I know of use direct current, and so it's always positive or always negative. So that's not going to work. And if you use a regular light bulb for a night light, that's not going to work either, because what it does is it'll heat it up and it won't cool down enough to shut off the light through here. So in compact fluorescents, I really don't know, but you probably don't want to swing them around. So you want a neon light, and you want a extension cord that's somewhat flexible. Okay, so if you use one of the big orange ones, probably not going to work too well. So the demonstration itself is really quite easy. Okay, you can see that the light appears to be fairly constant. Okay, but if I take this and swing it around, so we can see that we see spots of light and spots of dark. And the reason we do that is that the neon is sensitive enough to where when the current goes through 0, it shuts off. But we can't see that because it happens too fast. And so we have alternating light on, light off, light on, light off, and it switches 120 times a second in this country. So what I would suggest is that you show this to the kids and decide how much of the background information you want to give them, or you want them to find out for themselves. This would make a nice group research paper type thing. And then you could either use this as a beginning or an ending for the thing. And like I said, it makes a very nice little demonstration. Okay, if you want to do, say, just kids, you've heard about alternating current, AC this and AC that. Here, let me show you. So you could make it a very simple thing or make it a very complex thing. Depends on what you think for your students. Okay, thank you very much.